Essay number 41, Things You Need to Know About Yourself Before You'll Have the Life You Want. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And that might be the most important thing you'll hear today. Because right now, you're probably trying to build the life you want by starting from the outside and working in. You're choosing careers based on titles, relationships based on images, goals based on what looks good to other people. You're designing a life based on concepts instead of reality, on how things appear instead of how they actually feel to live. We've been completely indoctrinated into this ego-driven Western obsession with living a big life. A life that photographs well, a life that sounds impressive at dinner parties, a life that looks successful from the outside. But here's what nobody tells you. You can achieve all of that and still be miserable. You can get everything you thought you wanted and realize it's nothing like what you actually needed. So let's dismantle this whole approach. Let's talk about what you actually need to know about yourself before you can build a life you genuinely want to live, not just one that looks good on paper. First question, and this is going to sound simple, but it's revolutionary. What do you want your daily tasks to be? Not what do you want to be? Not what title do you want? What do you want to actually do, hour by hour, day by day? We're so obsessed with roles and titles that we forget those are just labels for collections of tasks. You say you want to be a doctor because it sounds noble, but have you thought about what doctors actually do all day? The paperwork, the bureaucracy, the insurance battles, the 12-hour shifts. You say you want to help people, but how? Do you want to help them by touching their bodies and providing physical care? By sitting at a computer, analyzing data that might save lives? By teaching them something that changes their perspective? By building something they need? These are completely different daily experiences, even though they all help people. When you choose based on what you want each day to look like, how many hours at a computer, how much human interaction, how much physical activity, how much quiet thinking time, you're building from reality up, not from fantasy down. You're choosing a life you'll actually want to live, not just one that sounds good when you describe it. Next, what kind of person do you want to be? And I'm not asking about adjectives on your LinkedIn profile. I'm asking about who you want to be while you're doing whatever you do. It doesn't matter if you're a CEO or a janitor, a teacher or a student, a parent or an artist. What matters is, are you kind while doing it? Are you present? Are you generous? Are you bitter? Are you distracted? Are you resentful? Because that's what your life actually consists of, not your job title, but how you inhabit that title. You are defined not by what you do, but by how you do it. The janitor who does their work with dignity and kindness is living a better life than the CEO who does their work with cruelty and anxiety. The unknown artist creating with joy is more successful than the famous one creating in misery. Here's a sobering one. What do you want to be remembered for? What do you want them to say at your funeral? That you had an impressive job title? That you stayed skinny? That you had a lot of followers on social media? Or that you were kind? That you made people feel seen? That you showed up for the people you loved? That you had the courage to live authentically? Your impermanence is something you should think about every day. Not to be morbid, but to be honest. You don't have forever. Most of what you're stressing about won't matter in a year, much less at the end of your life. What will matter is how you influenced other people's lives, often just through daily interactions, and the courage with which you lived your own truth. What comes most effortlessly to you? We have this toxic belief that if something comes easily, it's not valuable. If we're not suffering, we're not earning. If it's effortless, it's not meaningful. This is insane. Your natural gifts, the things that come so easily to you that you don't even notice you're doing them, those are your superpowers. Maybe organizing comes naturally to you. Maybe making people laugh does. Maybe you can see patterns others miss. Maybe you can make people feel comfortable. These aren't lesser gifts because they're easy for you. They're your gifts precisely because they're easy for you. The tragedy is how many people ignore their natural abilities because they think real work has to be hard. What do you believe your existence is about? This is the question under all other questions. Do you think you're here randomly? That life is meaningless? That everything is predetermined? That you're here to learn something, accomplish something, experience something? Your answer to this question determines everything else. If you believe life is random, you'll live differently than someone who believes life has purpose. If you believe your fate is predetermined, you'll make different choices than someone who believes they create their own destiny. There's no right answer, but you need to know what your answer is. Because until you do, you're living according to someone else's philosophy, probably one you inherited without examining. And that inherited philosophy might be completely wrong for who you actually are. Why do you do what you do each day? Is it for money, security, recognition, to avoid something, to prove something? There's no judgment here, just the need for honesty. If you're doing it for money, own that. Use it. Let it fuel something meaningful. If you're doing it to prove something to someone who probably isn't even paying attention anymore, recognize that. Most people don't know why they do what they do. They're on autopilot, following patterns they established years ago for reasons they can't remember. But when you know your why, you can either lean into it or change it. When you don't know your why, you're just drifting. In your fantasy daydreams, who are you and how do other people see you? This is revealing something crucial. Your recurring daydreams show what you feel you lack. If you're always imagining people admiring your success, you feel unsuccessful. If you're imagining being loved, you feel unloved. If you're imagining being understood, you feel misunderstood. These fantasies are showing you what you're trying to get from others, because you haven't given it to yourself. They're revealing the hunger you're trying to feed through external validation. But here's the thing, even if you get that external validation, it won't satisfy the hunger if you haven't first given that validation to yourself. What do you dislike most about other people? This one's gonna sting. What you hate most in others is in some form true about you. The more violently you reject this idea, the more true it probably is. We don't have strong emotional reactions to things that have nothing to do with us. We have strong emotional reactions to things we recognize. That person whose neediness drives you crazy, you have neediness you're not acknowledging. That person whose arrogance infuriates you, you have arrogance you're not seeing. That person whose victim mentality frustrates you, some part of you is playing victim too. This isn't about judgment, it's about recognition. Because all the energy you're using to hate these qualities in others is energy you could be using to heal these qualities in yourself. And until you do, they'll keep showing up in your life through other people over and over again. What is worth suffering for? Everything involves suffering. Everything. Being in the wrong relationship involves suffering. Being in the right relationship involves suffering. Being alone involves suffering. Having children involves suffering. Not having children involves suffering. Following your dreams involves suffering. Not following them involves suffering. The question isn't how to avoid suffering. That's impossible. The question is, what suffering is worth it to you? What are you willing to struggle for? Because that tells you what you actually value much more than what you say you value. You don't get to choose whether you suffer. You only get to choose what you suffer for. Choose wisely. Finally, what owns you in this life? Everyone has something that ultimately controls them at a visceral level. Maybe it's your need for approval. Maybe it's your fear of abandonment. Maybe it's your addiction to intensity. Maybe it's your terror of being ordinary. Maybe it's your desperate need to be special. Whatever it is, it's running your life. It's the pattern underneath all your other patterns. It's the wound that won't heal. It's the hunger that won't be satisfied. It's what you're always either chasing or running from, and often both at the same time. You need to know what owns you because it's driving most of your decisions. And here's the plot twist. You probably can't get rid of it, but you can learn to work with it. You can find the gift in the wound. You can discover how your greatest weakness might also be your greatest strength. just misdirected. Here's what all these questions are really about. They're about making the unconscious conscious. They're about seeing the patterns you're running without realizing it. They're about understanding the programs that are controlling your life so you can either rewrite them or at least work with them consciously. Because until you know these things about yourself, you're not choosing your life. You're just living out patterns. You're not making decisions. You're following programming. You're not creating your future. You're recreating your past. The life you want isn't out there waiting to be found. It's not going to be given to you when you achieve enough or become enough or fix enough about yourself. The life you want is created by understanding who you actually are, what you actually want, and what you're actually willing to do to get it. Not what sounds good, not what looks good, not what you think you should want. What you actually want, based on who you actually are, living in actual reality. These questions aren't meant to be answered once. They're meant to be lived with, returned to, revised as you grow and change. Because who you are isn't fixed. What you want isn't static. What owns you can change. What you're willing to suffer for can evolve. But you have to start with awareness. You have to make the unconscious conscious. You have to see what's actually running your life before you can start running it yourself. Because until you do, you'll keep building lives that look good but feel empty. You'll keep achieving goals that don't satisfy you. You'll keep entering relationships that don't nourish you. You'll keep making choices that take you further from who you actually are. The life you want requires you to know yourself in ways that might be uncomfortable. It requires you to see patterns you'd rather not see. It requires you to admit things you'd rather deny. It requires you to take responsibility for things you'd rather blame on others or on circumstances. But on the other side of that discomfort is freedom. The freedom to choose based on what you actually want, not what you think you should want. The freedom to build a life that fits who you actually are, not who you think you should be. The freedom to stop living unconsciously and start living deliberately. Your unconscious patterns have been directing your life long enough. It's time to make them conscious. It's time to stop calling it fate and start calling it what it is, choice. Your choice, based on real self-knowledge, not fantasy. Based on who you are, not who you wish you were. The life you want is possible, but first you have to know who's wanting it. And that requires answering these questions, not just thinking about them, not just considering them, but really, honestly, courageously answering them. Because until you know yourself, you can't know what you want. And until you know what you want, you can't build the life you want. And until you build the life you want, you'll always feel like something's missing, like you're living someone else's life, like you're performing rather than being. The questions are simple. The answers might not be. But the life on the other side of that self-knowledge, that's the life you've been looking for. That's the life that actually fits. That's the life you'll want to live, not just one that looks good to live.